Alright, what is up guys? This is PVM Vertigo and welcome back to Kerbal Colonization. And right here we're launching Project Constellation, which is going to be the long-term support for the Geosynchronous Orbit, or KSO. We're going to launch 3 of these satellites. They're going to be just like last episodes, which was KSO number 1, 2, and 3. They're just going to be replacing those because we deleted all those because they came out of their orbits after only like 180 days. They fell apart and the satellite network was unusable anymore. So today we're going to be using automation such as MechJeb in order for us to actually get things to line up properly. So I don't like using MechJeb a whole lot, but for this it's perfect because we need to get it as accurate as we can. And I'll show you what I mean right now. Okay, so we've transitioned to the point where we're going to be kind of figuring out where we're going to be going. So right now I'm copying and pasting in actually the height, altitude you have to be at, which is 2868.75 megameters. So that's like 2,686 kilometers. So we need to fly approximately that high up for us to have a surface speed of 0 or a geosynchronous orbit, or just an orbit in which the ground should appear not to move. So we actually use the maneuver planner of MechJeb in order to give us a more accurate maneuver node. I tried doing it by hand last episode, but our orbit fell apart within a few months. So hopefully this will be a longer term support. See, right here we're using the maneuver nodes. Gonna get it a little bit more accurate. But it's pretty standard stuff. We did this last episode. We're just making it more automated in order for it to be more accurate. So yeah, we travel up to the apoapsis. You can see we're at a good angle. We are always connected to the mission control. We never once got in a dark spot. So this is going to be serving as our main relay. Anything that gets relayed to KSO number 2 or 3 will have to go to KSO number 1 due to not being able to see the mission control. And so this will relay it right there. Although both of the second satellites that I'm going to be sending up, the second and third, they're also going to be targeting mission control just in case the satellite network shifts a little bit, which will probably happen over how many years is going to be up here because this series is going to be pretty long. Of course, in-game years, but. So we're circularizing here. This is by no means going to be a perfect orbit, so we're going to have to change it a little bit using the maneuver planner again. Inclination is not a problem. That doesn't really matter. But the altitude has to be almost perfect. So actually you can either use orbit info or you can use maneuver planner. Either is good. Orbit info is actually the most accurate because it gives you the actual real height. You don't actually just have to estimate with maneuver nodes. It makes it a little bit more accurate. And for the long term, it's kind of it's very finicky, but you don't want to have to replace your satellites because that's just a pain. And as you can see here, we're just skipping over to a different part. We actually deploy the satellite. Now you may be thinking, well, you're not done maneuvering it yet. Well, in this new design of the KSO fleet, we actually have RCS controls right on the satellites. This makes it a lot easier to actually do different maneuver nodes because you can use the RCS to control it. Now you may be asking, how am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to use the there's 3 buttons that you see in the bottom left, right? There's the green one, the purple one, and the blue one. The purple one will actually take you to sort of a docking interface with the RCS. And if you were to press shift, that would actually make you go upwards in relation, so you just press that and that acts basically as an engine. I think they might have actually updated how that works, but I'll have to look into that later. I just did it the way I've been doing it since 0.21. So yeah, doing some basic maneuvers, and then we'll switch over to the next satellite in the fleet. So here we go. You can see, actually, I'm not even in docking maneuver. So apparently, if you hold shift, RCS actually automatically goes there. Okay, that's actually kind of cool how that does that. I didn't actually know that it did that until now. That's pretty interesting. I might have to do that. I might have to design some new satellites that use that because I did not know that was the case anymore. But nevertheless, this is a success. We have pretty much the most accurate orbits we've ever had. in this series at least. So yeah, here's Project Constellation. Same exact rocket except for one small difference. We have the same amount of SRBs and stuff. Oh, there's an actual shot of our network. See, we have it pointed at the moon, the active vessel, and mission control. That's how it's set up. But the only difference between this rocket and the last rocket we launched up was we actually have another one of those SAS reaction wheels. Just makes it a little bit easier to control in space. That was a problem. So yeah, that's the only thing we've changed. Everything else is completely the same. So yeah, this is a very low-tech rocket. We probably will never use it again after Project Constellation. It's pretty inefficient. I mean, it uses a lot of SRBs. It would be very cheap if we were in actual career. But the thing is, it's very bulky, it's very unaerodynamic, and, well, it just doesn't fly as well. It's good for lifting things straight up in the air without having to turn. If I had to turn it in the low atmosphere, I would probably break the spacecraft. Either break it or flip it over. One of the two. So yeah, here you can see that we're actually changing up our setup right away. We're getting too high up, so our omnidirectional antenna, the launch antenna, cannot reach the mission control anymore. So we're actually going to be targeting KSO number 1. And then we have to switch over to KSO number 1 to actually target back, because if they're not targeting at each other, they don't actually work. So you can see I already have 2 antennas open. 2 antenna, I think that's the plural, whatever. Target, it's still called Project Constellation. I'm pretty sure if I rename it, it doesn't actually make a difference. But either or, you can see that we're growing our satellite network. And they're able to communicate with each other, which is very nice. So yeah, now the 2 satellites are connected to each other. All we need to do is position KSO number 2, which is what I'm renaming it right now, into a viable position in part of the triangle. And it's going to be a lot neater than what I did last episode. I've learned a lot since then. Okay, out of sheer luck, I actually ended up with I ended up a little bit close to the actual target. You can see that it's just at a different inclination there. It looks like it's closer to Kerbal, but it's actually not. It's actually right above me, which is a little bit different. But you can see the maneuver node right there. And we're going to be adjusting our orbit a little bit so that when we come back around the actual bend, or the orbit, we will be at hopefully a estimated like 150 degree angle. 130 or 120 degree is good. 120 would be the best, obviously, but it doesn't always turn out that way. We're going to try for that. We want to have a perfect triangle so that even if satellites start drifting, the satellite network will still work. Last episode, we actually had a problem where the satellite drifted only a little bit, and it blocked off complete communication on one side of the network, and it was just a mess. We're not going to have that happen again, so we're going to be very, very precise with this and position it properly. So all in all, I did around 3 or 4 correction burns. This is the last one. And you may be asking, this is so tedious. This doesn't look like something I'd want to play. This doesn't look like Kerbal Space Program. Now remember, this is not vanilla Kerbal Space Program. This is a mod called Remote Tech. It just makes things a little bit more realistic, a little bit more fun. Especially for me, I like creating stuff like this. This is actually a really big challenge. I love this. And, I don't know. It's just, I want to make it perfect. I want to make it so that this network will last for the rest of the series. So, if you want that to happen, you have to have everything within the meter, within the, well, if it's 100th of a meter, it's 0.75, within the centimeter. It has to be that accurate. Which is very exciting to me. So yeah, we're just doing some final things with KSO number 2 here. Pretty much it's in orbit. It's perfectly aligned there. Look at that. We just need 1 by the marker over there, you can see, on the orbit. And then we'll be done with this the satellite network. But all in all, it's looking pretty good. However, we actually had to have 1 more correction just because of the fact that I decoupled the thing too late. Yeah, it turns out I forgot to decouple the thing. So we have to correct that, and it's kind of hard because decoupling force isn't that much, but I made it as accurate as possible. But there you go. This is basically a perfect orbit. Should last for hundreds and hundreds of years. I hope. Alright, so here you go. I'm sure you guys are tired of this launch. It looks the same every single time. So we're just going to skip over right to the orbital maneuvering after you can see the beautiful takeoff of this thing. Beautiful. Right? But after a few minutes launching, the orbit looks pretty much the same as anything we've ever launched concerning satellites. So there you can see our incomplete orbit right there. We're actually going to be changing our orbit a little bit to make it line up with our actual goal. So we're doing a circularized maneuver so that we can get periapsis and apoapsis to equal roughly the same. And we're actually setting the satellites as targets. Some people, they would actually use MechJeb to the full extent to say we want a 2/3 orbital period in order to actually maneuver properly. But I like just circularizing and doing it manually. I feel like it makes it more, not so robotic. Even though we are using MechJeb a whole lot, this is something that I just like to do. So yeah, we actually have to overburn. This is a problem. We might not have enough fuel, guys. Due to the fact that usually you have to underburn. Like, you don't have to burn as much, and then you can just coast and then do the rest of the burn. No, we have to overburn, and then we have to burn the other way again. Just we could underburn, but for the sake of time in this video, I don't want to just be flying around for a few minutes. I'd rather just do this in one shot. It's more accurate that way too. So yeah, the orbit ends up looking like this. We kind of just fly out there. And remember, when you're further away from Kerbal, the slower you go in comparison to everything else. So you can see us sliding right into position here. It's becoming a triangle, guys. Look at that. Perfect maneuver. See, we came out, we're slowed down, and look at that. Just as that happens, triangle appears. Illuminati confirmed. Am I right? I'm just kidding, guys. But if there is the Illuminati of space, I have just summoned it. But yeah, this is the end of the construction of the orbital network. This is the last satellite that we have to actually configure. I'm just using the satellite dishes that we have mounted on it. And by the way, you may be asking, how do we power these things? Don't these dishes take a lot of electric charge? I thought you were completely dying in that one episode when you didn't have electric charge. Well, we actually have solar panels. Those produce energy, and we have a big battery pack. It's actually in the service bay. I've just stacked a bunch of them. No problems with electric charge. So I can run all these different antennas, target everything you'd ever need. So yeah, it's very good. Yeah, this is the end of this construction. We won't have to put any more satellites in for a while, so here's a last look at the network before we start flying some actual rockets to different places. Yep, this is definitely the Kerbal Illuminati. Okay, so you may be asking, when are we going to use this new Illuminati triangle relay system that is extremely accurate now instead of going to fall apart? Well, we're going to use it right now. We're launching Explorer 2, the successor to Explorer 1. Remember, the Explorer series is meant to, explore. It's meant to be the first spacecraft to ever reach an object and to basically be the scout. So yeah, we don't have, that's a lot of wobbling there. And the reason it's wobbling is because it actually has a secondary payload, but I'm getting off topic. I need to talk about the Explorer first. So what it's going to do is the Explorer series is going to be the first spacecraft to anything. So if I'm going to Duna, it'll land on Duna, it'll scout everything out, it'll find a good landing spot, and it'll come back home. And then after that, the colonization things will come in, and then we'll have like bases and stuff, and it'll be pretty cool. We've only worked with the Explorer yet because we're early in the series. We don't have any colonization stuff, so yeah. So anyway, this is the second version of the Explorer 2, or this Explorer, and it's going to be heading back to the moon today. Which brings me back to that secondary payload that I was going to talk about earlier. So you can see it from here because I zoomed in. It's basically a satellite. It's a little mini satellite. It only has 3 antennas, 2 of which are omnidirectional and 1 of which is directional. And what it's going to do is I'm going to go into higher orbit around the moon. I'm going to place the satellite there, and I'm going to release it. And the 2 omnidirectional ones are going to be just activated all the time. So will the directional one, but the directional one will be pointed at Kerbal. It's not going to be pointed at any satellite in particular. It's going to be pointed right at Kerbal. It can either contact mission control directly, or it will have to go through a relay because its cone will be 30 degrees, and that should be enough to cover everything. So it'll always be in contact with something. And the only downside is that we won't have 100% communication. We'll just have to wait for the moon sat to come around. But once we are able to actually transmit to it, everything else should go well because it'll have something in sight all the time. So that's going to be good. This is the start to our new moon satellite network. It's the first step to colonizing it too, which is good. So here we are getting ready for our burn, and Explorer 2's second stage is ready to tackle this problem. Just like the Explorer 1, this thing is a powerhouse. It's got 2,000 meters per second of delta V, and it is ready to transfer to the moon. Keep in mind that it is doing a little bit more work than it should because it does have a secondary payload that weighs around 1 or 2 tons, something around there. So don't take that into account when we're actually going to be using this Explorer 2 to actually maybe go to Duna. I don't know, by my calculations and by everybody else's calculations on the Delta V maps, this spacecraft, or this rocket, should be able to land on Duna and come back. And especially because of the actual lander, which I'll show in a sec. Because there's something a little bit different about the lander that you'll have to see once we actually get up close to the moon. But not concerning the lander, here we are. We have a intercept or an encounter here. But we're not actually going to get close to the moon. Usually you get closer for better efficiency. But today we're going to be at a higher altitude due to the fact we have to release a satellite up there. And lower altitudes mean higher dark time, so increased height is better for satellites. So here we are, getting ready to execute our quick little burn. It's not going to take, it actually won't take nearly any time. Should be pretty fast burn, a few seconds maybe. Maybe like 10 seconds, 11 seconds, I don't know. It's going to be a lot shorter than the actual burn that got us here though. So that's always nice. Remember, right after this, we're actually going to be launching our satellite. We're just going to ditch that satellite because we're not going to do anything more with this. We just need to put it in orbit, and it should be fine. It should be self-sustained because it does have solar panels and batteries on there, so we shouldn't have to deal with the satellite anymore. After we set it up, of course. So, remember, we're going to set it up. Now, the top antenna is actually going to be pointed towards Kerbal. So let's get that set up. Alright, yeah. And we're going to activate it. And now if you look here, see it's already contacting 2 different relays, and I don't want to enable that, that's really messy, but yeah, it has 2 different relays that it can work off of. If the mission control is actually pointed at us, it would go through that too. So, that's obviously working. Now the other thing we need to do is we need to enable the omnidirectional antennas. Because the moon sphere of influence is actually not that big. So pretty much anywhere you are on the moon, if you're underneath the satellite, you won't need a directional antenna. You just need an omnidirectional antenna. So yeah, we're just going to release that satellite there. Look at it go. Beautiful. Actually, that decouple actually changed the orbit a little bit, but that's okay. This doesn't need an accurate orbit like the other ones did. So yeah, we're just going to rename it Moon Relay Number 1. Because that's what it is. There's no point in naming it very fancily because there's going to be a lot more satellites just like it. We might even have hundreds of satellites. In fact, we will have hundreds of satellites by the end of this series, floating around different celestial bodies, and might as well number them and make them easy to distinguish. So here we are. We are actually slowing ourselves down now very, very fast. We're going to be doing a little bit of a different landing. I think instead of actually aiming at the ground first, I should actually bring my orbit down to like 10,000 meters or so. And then when I actually get down to the periapsis, I'll slow down in order for us to actually cancel out all our speed and then fall, instead of falling and then canceling out our speed. It's not as efficient. Well, actually, I think it's not as efficient as a suicide burn, but it's more controlled. It's a lot more controlled, actually. And it's good for these steep angles right here. Alright. So our second stage is almost out of fuel, and we're going to have to go on to our lander stage after that. Look at our delta V. Yeah, it's got barely nothing. Barely anything, I mean. Gonna turn it around, and then we're going to be firing it. There it is. And it's out. And there it is. I was just paranoid about what that was. But no. And holy crap, look at that flame. That is a carbonite engine. And they worked really hard on the animations. And I was initially scared when I was recording this. Good thing I didn't have my mic on because it would be pretty loud. But I got used to it. So yeah, that huge fire plume is the carbonite engine. And the reason I put that on there was not because of the actual look, which is pretty baller, I gotta say, pretty boss. But actually, the reason I put it on there is because it runs on carbonite. It's a carbonite engine, runs on carbonite. Pretty simple, right? But what carbonite is actually a resource that you can mine. It's a resource that you can mine up from the ground using a drill. You can use it, like the carbonite tank we have on there, we can actually fill it up with the drill. We don't have the drill yet, but eventually when we do, we could refuel our fuel supply. You could also use a converter to turn it into liquid fuel and oxidizer. But it's always nice to have a carbonite fueled rocket engine. And actually, I was playing around with Delta V stats, and the actual liquid fuel engine, or liquid fuel oxidizer engine, it actually got 800 meters per second Delta V. Well, this actually got well over 1,500 or 2,000 when you put extra ones on there. So I don't know if it's heavier or what, or if it has more carbonite fuel, or I don't even know, but this apparently is more efficient, even though the ISP is a lot different. But the main reason we're using it is for the refillability. So here we are, we're going to be coming down in a second. That flame plume is very distracting, but it's awesome. Here we are coming down. Here's the point of landing. First time the Explorer 2 has been successful. Hopefully it can have a 100% success rate just like its older brother, the Explorer 1. And time to deploy those solar panels. So yeah, Jebediah does a little bit of science, and he comes right on back. Not much to see here, just average science, you know, you have every day in the Kerbal Space program. So here he is. He's got to actually come down and get the science bay stuff. We got to collect that data. That's very important. And then we'll go right back up into the ladder. And then we're going to go home. Now, I'm actually starting to get a little bit worried now because our fuel is running a little bit low. You can see there it's a little bit low. And I'm a little bit paranoid because I can't tell if I can get home or not. Like, usually it's apparent, like, oh, your fuel is completely gone. You can't get home. Or your fuel's pretty full. You can definitely get home. But oh, this is very borderline. I'm not sure if I can get home or not. And I haven't had that happen in a long time in Kerbal Space Program. The way I designed this rocket, it should have been able to get home just fine. I think it was the secondary payload that messed it up in our inefficient orbits that we used to get here because we had to deliver that satellite. Just goes to show you that sometimes doing two things at once is not good in Kerbal Space Program. And after playing with gravity assists and maneuvers and stuff, it turns out that even if I add a maneuver at the bottom end of the actual orbit, it's still not gonna make it home. It's gonna be a few, or like 50,000 meters too high. So this is gonna be kind of annoying. Because you know what happens if we are a few thousand meters. We're gonna have to get out and push. But I won't let that happen right now. I'm going to do all I can to use the Delta V that I can to make it at least so that Jebediah won't have to push as much. So a way to increase your actual Delta V, or your effectiveness of using that Delta V, is to actually burn closer to the planet, right? And use the Oberth effect. That's what I'm doing. I'm trading my height for speed as I'm going to slingshot myself around towards the planet, or towards the moon. But I'm not going to hit the moon, right? I'm going to slingshot past the mountains. I'll be flying pretty close to them. And then I'm going to slingshot my way over, and then I'll have added speed. And it'll help us get home. But Since the maneuver actually isn't going to work, I do have to get out and push a few times. So I'll just let you see a few of these because there was a total of, I think it was 7 get on pushes. But I think this scene itself is thumbnail worthy. I gotta say, this is a beautiful scene. But yeah. I'm actually not getting out and pushing now. I'm actually grabbing the mystery goo. But same difference, right? Okay, so here's a scene where we actually are getting out and pushing. So we're pushing against the end of the spacecraft. Meanwhile, we're flying only 5,000 meters above death and craters. So yeah, I thought this was a pretty good image. If it was on the day side, I would make this the thumbnail because look at how beautiful this would be if it was lit up in day. Look at that, we're just flying very, very fast above the mountains, getting out and pushing every so often, trying to see how close we are. Not close at all, so we're going to have to do this a few more times. So I'm going to skip over that because we're coming up on the end of this video right now. Let's just skip to what happens when we actually end up intersecting Kerbal's atmosphere. Okay, so in the end, we end up making the periapsis low enough after 7 different times of doing this. And I'm just tracking the apoapsis because I really don't want it to go around anymore. I just want it to get low enough so that we're actually able to aero brake and land. But spoiler alert, we do land. And this was the first successful flight of the Explorer 2. First trip was to the moon. Hopefully in the next episode or the episode after that, it might have a successful flight to Duna. Let's hope on that. But for right now, this is the last flight of today. We'll go into some upgrades later, but I actually had a problem after this. I clicked recover, and well, the game crashed. So there's that. Luckily though, when I got back in, it actually was still there. I just didn't recover it. I didn't lose any science or anything, so that was nice. So that's fine. All that science is still usable. I can use it to upgrade anything I want. So yeah, we get in the Research and Development Center, and we're looking for those drills, but I can't seem to find them. I think it might be after fuel systems, so we probably won't be able to use carbonite drills for a while. I didn't see them anywhere. But usually the thing that people or noobs would buy would be rocket engines, but I feel like I might actually have to buy the rocket engines first. So I might just get the bigger rocket engines. Yes, I'm going to. Because I feel like the Explorer 2 can be upgraded with the use of a mainsail. And it might be easier to actually fly to Duna using it. So I feel like it's an investment of science, and we're going to get more science back once we get there. And we're able to actually, well, come back because we'll have enough Delta V. So I feel like this investment of 160 science will be more fruitful than just a waste. So I'm just going to use it on the heavy rocketry. And there you have it. Well, that's the end of this episode. Thank you for watching. Stay tuned for more Kerbal colonization videos. Hopefully I can make another one in like 3 or 4 days. I usually do. Stay tuned for more. Subscribe if you haven't. My name is PVM Vertigo. Peace out.